Hi everyone, my name is Aurélien Conraux and I am the Delegate Chief Data Officer for the French Ministry of Culture. And today I'd like to present the Ministry's 2024 decision to join the IIIF consortium and what this signifies for both the French cultural landscape and our shared international goals. So first, the Ministry of Culture's awareness of IIIF's potential is not something that emerged overnight. At the same time as research institutions did, especially Biblissima, a few French cultural institutions have been early adopters of the framework. Here you see the API of the National Library, and those institutions have demonstrated for all to see the potential for making high-quality images available for scholarly and public use. The C2RMF, a leading research lab for artwork study and restoration, which is situated under the Louvre Museum, has been a member for years too, and develops the European Research Open System portal, which uses IIIF. And France Archives, the national aggregator for national and local archives, has long been promoting IIIF for digital resources too. Here, you can also see the IIIF manifest on the Paris City Museum portal, which doesn't depend on the ministry. It's independent, it's by the city. And we have 500,000 artifacts from 12 different museums, which are digitized and available under a CC0 public domain license and with a IIIF manifest and an API. To say it otherwise, a handful of project managers are already familiar with the powerful tools and principles of IIIF. However, cultural institutions in France, and here you see the center of Paris with some of the Olympic sites, but only a limited part of the, very limited part of the French cultural institutions, those entities whether archives, museums, libraries, are numerous, autonomous, and to be honest, largely self-centered. So what we lacked was a coherent national strategy. On this slide only, you have museums, public and private. You have museums depending on the Ministry of Culture, of the Ministry of Defense, scientific institutions, ancient monuments like Notre Dame and La Sainte-Chapelle, modern art museum, like le Centre Pompidou, the Louvre, Musée d'Orsay, Musée de l'Orangerie, and so on, National Library, and so on and so forth. We need a guiding hand. That's what the Ministry of Culture, represented by the small blue, white, red dot, is. It's here to ensure that the thousands of similar institutions existing in France are aligned in their efforts so that we can efficiently manage, share, and leverage the vast digital collections available. And the national policy on IIIF does provide exactly that. So the goal of the national policy is simple. We want to simplify decision-making and development processes for IIIF applications, whether for 2D or 3Ds, for images and text. We want to expand interoperability across different collections, different platforms, local, national, European, and international digital portals. And on a practical level, we want to enhance training and project management support to ensure that institutions are not only using IIIF, but doing so effectively. So the challenge to do that is to be as lightweight as possible, because top-down policies hardly work. Cultural domain have networks which have a lot of legitimacy, newsletters, relationship with digital service providers, and so on. And of course, there's, as everywhere, a scarcity of experts. So we have a very practical organization and a flexible roadmap. How does it work? The Ministry's General Secretariat handles membership and administrative relations with the consortium, including covering travel costs to conferences. And that Secretary General has published a clear minimal national strategy to promote IIIF, which is available online on the Ministry's website. And each month, we gather a small group with experts who represent the main services of the ministry for alignment. We talk about current news, upcoming events, and strategy, and we distribute our to-do list between transverse and sectorial tasks. Participation to upcoming events is discussed and will be attributed on a voluntary basis to cover both strategic learning and technical workshops. And of course, feedback will be provided to non-participants. Then each cultural domain, archives, libraries, and museums mainly, will maintain its own specialized documentation networks, including initial relations with software editors whenever convenient. And if needed, the digital office is looking at ways to promote IIIF adoption among all editors. So we're working on several axes, which you see here, some of which are purely internal and technical, others are operated by research lab or private industries, and we've started to see some results. First, the policy has been transmitted to the heads of the 80 institutions that fall under the ministry's supervision, and it is being relayed to other private or local organizations. Our hope is that this momentum will continue to grow and create a ripple effect throughout France, like what happened with ARC persistent identifiers. Then the ministry's own digital infrastructure will get IIIF capacities in early 2025 to manipulate digital resources that originally were gathered for regulatory or compliance purposes, and to make these resources more accessible, more available, and useful, both internally and externally. And the onboarding of private companies seem to take off too. For instance, we have an expert service provider which is developing with IIIF.fr, a website, IIIF as a service platform and offer, which could unburden cultural institutions from the technical part and allow them to focus on the use cases, on the impact, and on the scientific research and uses of their digital collections. So what do we hope to achieve in the near future by implementing a national policy? First and foremost, we expect to see an increase, it's obvious, but it's worth mentioning it, in the number of cultural institutions adopting IIIF. Increased interoperability comes a close second. This means that not only will individual institutions be able to share their collections more easily, but they will also be able to contribute to larger European initiatives. And furthermore, we hope that this policy will lead to a broader adoption of open content policies. As the Ministry of Culture continues to integrate IIIF into its own infrastructure, we envision a future where more and more of France's cultural resources are available to the public, and not only for viewing, but also for meaningful interaction, scientific or commercial or whatever, and as many uses as possible. So we are very confident that the national policy is an efficient way to industrialize IIIF faster, quicker, and at a lower cost overall. And of course, we are very interested in observing similar initiatives like the Dutch and Flemish IIIF Association to get improve our roadmap to go further. And we hope our national policy can be a blueprint for other countries, and we'll be happy to discuss it further with you. Thank you very much.
Burnand, who's at the British Library and the Universal Viewer Steering Group. So give me just a second.
Hello, my name's Erin Burnand and I'm Product Owner for the Universal Viewer at the British Library, and I'm also Chair of the Universal Viewer Steering Group. My talk today focused on the working element of this year's theme, and specifically the ways in which a community as large and diverse as IIIF community can work together effectively. Very recently, the Universal Viewer Steering Group ran its first community sprint, and I'm going to talk to you about our experience and what we learned along the way. We have run community sprints in the past. However, it was a really small number of individuals working on community issues rather than the community itself working together. I was curious to see how agile methodology would work with cross-institutional, interdisciplinary teams. One of the challenges of working with multiple organisations is that things can be slow. Would a focus sprint address this issue? There seem to be many benefits to me, such as enabling those new to IIIF and UV to get experience in a supported way. This is something my team and I would have appreciated when we first started working with UV. Faster development with more people working on the product. Diverse perspectives, contributions from developers with various backgrounds and expertise, leading to innovative solutions and faster problem solving, which in turn leads to improved ways of working. And increased community engagement. UV is an open source product that should have its community contributing on issues that are important to them and their users. Yet despite these perceived benefits, we never quite got around to organising anything, and the community sprint continued to be something we discussed but didn't put into action. Until in July this year, we received a Slack message from our colleagues at CogApp. They were running an accessibility review as part of work upgrading the UV on the Endangered Archives website. Would we like them to add these issues to GitHub with the tag accessibility? Of course. Little did we know there were over 20 of them, so cue some slightly panicked Slack messages between steering group members. Once the dust had settled, we realised what a fantastic opportunity this was, and the obvious answer was community sprint, so we started putting plans into place. This being the first sprint of this kind, it was somewhat experimental and would serve as a proof of concept to inform how we approach things in the future. We decided on a 2-week sprint, including sprint inception, daily stand-ups and a retrospective. We asked participants to commit to approximately 2 hours of work per day and offered paired programming for those concerned about skill level. We didn't spend time on estimations or really even prioritising the backlog, as we were already limiting it to a very specific set of issues. But we did appoint roles, with Sarah Wheel from National Library of Wales as Scrum Master, Damien Katz as Technical Lead and myself as Product Owner. The sprint inception was on the 15th of October and we went into it not really knowing what to expect, but we were really happy with the turnout. So we had 18 participants from 6 different institutions, including the British Library, National Library of Wales, University of the Arts, Villanova University and private companies. We had 11 software engineers and 4 testing engineers, and non-technical participants assisted with translations, assigning tasks and testing, and everyone involved had different levels of UV experience. During the inception, we decided on some sprint outcomes and team goals. Our sprint outcome was simple yet ambitious, aiming for a new release containing all the completed issues in the backlog and a new release of Manifold and the IIIF metadata component. There were more team goals, and the tiering group was particularly interested in recruiting a new group of committers, working towards a code review workflow and gaining experience to inform future community sprints. Despite some issues getting everyone on GitHub and Slack in the first day, the team made really good progress, and by the end of the first week, 60% of the issues had been moved from the backlog with 20% overall completed. This continued into the second week, and this is our community board at the end of the sprint. So the backlog was totally clear. There were 2 issues left in progress, 23 still in testing, and 35 completed. So we didn't achieve the desired sprint outcome. However, we knew we were being ambitious, and the sheer amount of work completed meant that the mood going into the retrospective was high. We had a mirror board set up for the retrospective, and I'll just talk you through some of the frames. So we asked the group what went well in the sprint, and you can see the responses here. The most obvious was the amount of work completed. Participants also reported that the sprint was a good intro to the community. There was a considerable amount of upskilling, and teamwork featured most frequently. Participants felt supported by the group, communication was good, and the team began working efficiently together very quickly, especially considering the length of the sprint. Now, what didn't go so well? The main issue was complexity of tasks. We underestimated how much effort was required to complete them, and it was obvious that some extra planning could have been carried out before the sprint. What will we do better next time? So, more planning ahead of the sprint. Longer sprints were suggested, which was really pleasing to hear that the group was being willing to do this. There was an overall lack of user input. It would have been really beneficial to have input from people who use assistive technology, so this is something we'll look to address next time, along with more stakeholder demos. I would absolutely recommend participating in a community sprint. We find it a really efficient and enjoyable way to work. As mentioned in earlier slides, pre-sprint or sprint zero planning is really important when working with teams outside your organisation. During the sprint, you need to be able to commit to it and be available, not just at the meetings, but be prepared to provide support when required. I would promote really widely, and in your institutions, there are many benefits and opportunities for professional development through getting involved in something like this. Everyone involved in our sprint enjoyed working together and had fun, but this was only possible in a respectful and supportive environment. Expectations on conduct should be set out at the inception. And embracing perfection, the only truly failed sprint is one that you don't learn from. So this sprint has triggered a period of intense activity for the Universal Viewer. So it's highlighted areas we need to focus on. We scheduled an admin sprint soon after, which we actually completed last week. It's crucial to be able to demonstrate to those that joined us that we'll put their hard work into action. So we intend to spend the remainder of this year creating and testing a release candidate with the aim of a new release of the UV in the new year. We found the community sprint experience to be such a success that we intend to build these sprints into our strategic roadmap. The themes of the sprints will be decided by the community, and we'll be holding a community road mapping exercise early next year. I've included a link to our community board here, so please take a look to see what we're working on. Keep an eye on Slack for information of our community events, and we'd really love to see you there.
Okay. Up next, we have Tim Leonard. Tim comes to us from Lancaster University, and he is presenting the Davy Notebooks Project and Lancaster Digital Collections.
Hello all, hope you can hear me okay. My name's Tim Leonard. I'm an Associate Director at Lancaster University Library in the UK. Just like to say, very sorry for interrupting a speaker before when I first joined the call. I joined at a very quiet time and I hadn't realised I was right in the middle of someone else's presentation, so sorry about that. But yes, so I'm going to be speaking to you about a project here at Lancaster called the Davy Notebooks Project. Lancaster University is a research-intensive university in the northwest of England, for those who aren't familiar with us. And a number of years ago, we launched our digital collections platform, imaginatively called Lancaster Digital Collections, in 2019. And we're actually part of a consortium with the University of Cambridge Library and Manchester University Library here in the UK. And our platform is actually a platform that was originally developed at Cambridge as the Cambridge Digital Library. Once that was launched then, I believe Cambridge had been using it for a number of years. Manchester came on board with them and started using the same platform. They badge it as Manchester Digital Collections, and then we joined a few years later. For us, it's a really, really valuable partnership and consortium because I think we're relatively earlier on in our digital scholarship journey. So it's a really good opportunity to learn from colleagues at Cambridge and Manchester who may have sort of more experience than us. But yeah, Lancaster Digital Collections has been really, really important to the library strategy. This is sort of a more tech-light talk than some others, but really it's more about how this platform and IIIF has been really, really valuable to our library strategy, because what it's enabled us to do is partner in research projects and actually become really involved in the research endeavour. And that's what an example of the Davy Notebooks project has been. What are the Davy Notebooks? Well, and who was Humphrey Davy? So he was actually, for those who may not be familiar with him, a really prominent chemist in the 19th century here in England. He's really probably most well known for his work in isolating various chemical elements for the first time. He's well known for his research into nitrous oxide or laughing gas. Here in the UK, he's very well known for the development of a safety lamp used by miners known as the Davy lamp. So there's a lot of interest from a kind of scientific perspective in Davy's work, but also he was very much at the time involved with the literary community of the time. So he was a contemporary of people such as Lord Byron, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, William Wordsworth. He was a friend of these people and wrote to them and met with them. So actually, a lot of his notebooks have examples of creative writing as well. things like poems and prose and short stories and almost like diary entries appearing in his chemical notebooks. These notebooks are previously held in hard copies at the Royal Institution of Great Britain in London, only available on, on appointment. So they weren't available to a wide audience at all. But then a number of researchers at Lancaster over the last few years received funding from the AHRC, which is the Arts and Humanities Research Council here in the UK, to basically complete a project to digitize and transcribe Davy's notebooks and bring them to a global audience. This is very much designed as a citizen science initiative. So really to crowdsource the transcription from volunteers all over the world. In total, there were over 3,800 global volunteers. I think if this project was getting started now, they would probably look to make more use of tools such as Transcribus and other sort of AI sort of tools to help with the transcription. Although a lot of this project, it was very manually done. But really, I think the intent was for it to be a citizen science initiative and actually engage a wide number of people actually in the research process. So that's what the research team at Lancaster have been focused on over the last few years, is transcribing collection of what ended up being over 130 notebooks with a huge number of volunteers. And then all of that information was then passed to a team in the library to actually sort of build a digital collection out of this. So this is very recently launched on our digital collections platform. And I hope I'm going to very, very quickly demo it. Please give me a shout if you can't see it, if it hasn't appeared for you, because I don't want to fall foul of screen issues. But yeah, this is Lancaster Digital Collections, our digital collections site. You can see some other collections that we have on here, but Davy is currently the main featured one. And as we go into it, so as I say, this is using, the platform developed at Cambridge. Some of the features of the platform include, and this was recently added in the last year, an option to be able to download the whole collection manifest. But then if I go into an individual notebook, there's tools to download the item manifest, to open it in Mirador. If I just give an example of with the transcription, so the whole notebooks have been transcribed, but they've also been annotated by volunteers. So they do feature notes about the text. So if I just click onto the transcription tab here, oops, I'm in trouble with this. Hopefully you can see that this is now, a transcription of, this actually isn't a bad example. This isn't too hard to read, but some of the text in these notebooks is very hard to read. But it's got, a full text transcription here with annotations, which are clickable. So you can find out more about key people, key terms, and that's throughout the entire collection of, like I say, 130 notebooks. This has been a really positive project for the library here at Lancaster. It's really helps us to develop our capabilities in the digital scholarship space, and also it's enabled us to engage with networks like this one. And we're really keen to engage and learn from others and do more work to develop both new collections and the platform in the future. And that is a very, very quick look through what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. That was great. And then up next, I'm going to welcome Erin McCrabb. Ian, are you set? Okay. Ian is going to present Glycerine Image Gandhara project from the university, and Ian is coming to us from the University of Sydney.
So everyone can see my screen? Great.
Yes.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yes, I have a research background in Sanskrit philology, but my context today is as director of a company called Systemic. So Systemic has been around for 30 years as an IT consulting group, and over the last 5 years or so, we've morphed into a digital humanities lab. And we develop research workbenches and content management solutions for Australian research funding bodies and for Australian universities. So one of those, Glycerine, our design brief was to build a workbench for researchers and curators and a framework for institutional implementation. I'll really just focus on strategy, features and outcomes. And in our workshops tomorrow, we'll be drilling into workflows and into architecture and integration. So we built Glycerine for its research affordances, for its curatorial application in the GLAM sector, and for its educational potential. We built a prototype in 2022, and we had generous funding in 2023 from the Australian Research Data Commons as part of their program of funding for humanities research. I should point out the name Glycerine is really just a dumb joke of mine, as it produces non-traditional research outputs, or nitros in Australian parlance. The opportunity to team nitro with glycerine was too much to resist. So the components of Glycerine are the workbench, which is a workflow interface, Glycerine Viewer, which is our open source IIIF viewer for customization and integration. And of course, that's already up on the IIIF cookbook. An image server, which is an optional sandpit we have for hosting images, and our server API, which provides access to all of the capabilities. So taken together with our image server and our API, it really rounds out a framework for institutional integration. So Workbench provides a suite of annotation tools and end-to-end workflows for researchers, curators or students to collaborate on projects across repositories. Sets of annotations can combine semantic tags from domain-specific vocabularies with critical analysis in multiple languages. I'll just do a very brief walkthrough of the foundational workflows. What you see on screen is that I have a collection selected, and I could go into any one of the 4 image sets and start working on the annotations. Of course, I can add a new collection at this point. Once I go into a collection, I can add a new image set to that collection with options to upload or link to images, or import a manifest. Then I can go in and start annotating that image with the annotation tools. I can tag my annotations with terms from published vocabularies, from scholarly vocabularies. I can then share the collection with collaborators, and I can publish the annotated image. And just to reinforce, all the features available from the UI are also accessible via API. We've done a range of projects to explore cultural history, art history, and epigraphy, and trialled its educational potential. One representative project is the Gandharan Buddhas, where we worked with a range of galleries and museums with collections of Gandharan statues, reliquaries, and friezes. I'll walk through one of the outputs just to demonstrate Glycerine Viewer. So we initially designed the viewer for the annotation features of our workbench, but it's now an open source viewer, and it supports the presentation, the IIIF presentation API, and manifests built with other tools, so full import, full compatibility. We developed it with the View 3 framework. It's got quite an elegant interface and provides really a comprehensive annotation feature set. And at this stage, that's where we're focusing our development efforts. So in Glycerine Viewer, one can click intuitively around the image for annotations of each of the components and then drill down to elite scholarship. I can click on annotations for detail. In this case, I've clicked on the standing bodhisattva, and I can then click on the tags that have been applied from a specialist Gandharan art vocabulary. I can show notes, and these are footnotes from previous scholarship about this image. I can show multiple languages. I can show mine or my collaborators' annotations, or all of the above. I can toggle layers of annotations and really use the display, use a containment hierarchy to modify the display. And interestingly enough, we can toggle between a default view and a table view where the annotations are all sprawled out as accessible data. So each of the segments are detailed for you with all of the data that's been added against them. So what I'll do now is just briefly précis the hosting options and potential for integration of Glycerine into institutional infrastructure. So Glycerine is hosted by ARDC and is provided free to the research and GLAM sector in Australia. It's also hosted on AWS by Systemic for international users, and it's free for small projects with a modest subscription for larger programs. I'll get people to reach out to me perhaps, and if you want to drill into how Glycerine can be integrated with your own IIIF server or with institutional digital asset management, or how Glycerine Viewer can be themed and embedded in the institutional content management system. I will just skip over this other than to mention that a long-term sustainability strategy has been baked into the whole platform. So in terms of inputs, Glycerine supports the import of local URL and IIIF images, existing IIIF manifests in both versions. We can import TEI files and, of course, custom imports via the API. Upon annotation, images can be viewed in Glycerine or in any other IIIF viewer. The manifest can be exported and elaborated upon with other IIIF compliant tools. And all the data can be accessed via API using Jupyter Notebooks or your own custom code. So if you've not already found it, it's at glycerine.io. On the home page is the Buddha triad that I demonstrated, as well as access to register and use the platform. There are links to both user and developer documentation. And whilst we're well underway in Australia, we've really only done a soft launch internationally. So we really look forward to any feedback that you might have before we launch officially in the new year. By all means, reach out. Thanks for your indulgence and attention. Really hope a lot of you might have a look and give us any feedback that you can. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, and good news. I think we have troubleshot the issue with David's Haskiya slides. So David, if you would like to get set up, we can try again. And if you want, maybe click through a couple slides and we'll give you the thumbs up before you dive headlong into the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Let me see here if I can figure this out. So I hope you see.
Good. Yeah. You want to try the next one? Okay,
do
we're
you see
good
a
to
nice
go.
little Swedish castle now?
Yes.
Yes, we're good to go.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, let's go then. So you'll all be happy to hear me repeat exactly what I said the last time, I guess, in the first slides. My name is David Haskiya. I manage a small team at the Swedish National Archive called the AI Lab and Data Services. And this presentation covers a little of both of those things, the data services and the AI development that we do. So we're a very old institution. We've been around for basically as long as the Swedish modern state. And that means that we also have large archival collections. And a lot of those archival documents, about 7% are scanned, which means that we have lots and lots of images of archival documents publicly available in our search services. But if you can't read very old handwriting, for example, you're out of luck, as well as if you can't read Swedish in most cases, although we have content and also in other languages. But what is this lightning talk about? It's not a general presentation about the institution I work at. So let me give you a little bit of backstory, which is that a couple of years ago, we started to do research and development when it came to develop models to HTR, handwritten Swedish language documents. Last year, in the autumn, about a year ago, we published our first base model on Transkribus. At that point, we had become convinced that yes, we can transcribe large amounts of documents with decent quality using HTR, and we wanted to go from research and development to actual product development to integrate this capabilities in our search service. And this lightning talk is about what we've done in 2024 and what remains to be done into the early next year. So last autumn, I made this sketch when I presented to our IT department, sort of what we wanted to do. The things that are in green here are things that we already had. What was in yellow are things that we had at least prototypes for. And all the gray stuff is things that we didn't have at all. And this napkin sketch makes it look really easy to accomplish this. So we decided that, well, within 2024, with a small Scrum team, we should be able to do this in 9 months, optimistically. But there was stuff to do. So one of the things that we needed to do was we wanted to be able to HTR documents in our local environment, partially to cut costs, but also to be able to, in the future, transcribe documents that for personal integrity reasons or security reasons cannot leave our own servers. So we created an open source version of this Swedish base model. We called it Swedish Lion Libre. The first one we published on Transkribus, we called the Swedish Lion #1. And if you go to Hugging Face, Riksarkivet at Hugging Face, if you Google that, you can find the open source version of Swedish Lion Libre if you're interested. But since we wanted to do HTR in our own environment, we also needed some sort of software, a pipeline, if you will, to process the images, to fetch them from where they're stored, to apply all of that AI magic, and in the other end, publish those Alto XML files that would contain the transcribed texts and the segmented lines around them. Just a few weeks ago, we released HTR Flow, which is our HTR pipeline. It's available on GitHub. Once we distribute all of these slides after the conference, you will be able to just click that link and find it. This is open source. If anyone has an interest in doing this yourselves, you might be able to save some of your development time by joining this development effort rather than to do your own. So pull requests are welcome. Another strand of work that we did this year is to create a document viewer where our users can search, type in keywords that they're interested in, see the hits that they're getting within one large set of this is a multi-page archival document of court records, and to see the transcribed text as well. So we started off with Universal Viewer 4. One of the reasons we chose Universal Viewer is that we were already Universal Viewer users, but Universal Viewer 3. And what we've done is that we've extended the capabilities of Universal Viewer 4, adding the search panel that you see there on the left with the search results, and the text panel that you see on the right where the transcribed texts are displayed. And these panels, the central viewer with the scanned image, the search panel on the left and the search panel on the right, these are all, of course, linked to each other. So as you can see here, where I performed the search for auctions, the words for auction are highlighted on the left page there in the middle, but also highlighted in the transcribed text panel on the right. It is also possible to download the texts as both raw ASCII files and as Alto files in XML if one would like to download them. But this is, of course, built on top of a IIIF content search API endpoint, so it's also possible to interact with these transcribed texts programmatically through IIIF. So, lessons learned and plans delayed. So the napkin sketch looked really easy, but it wasn't that easy as we thought. So to use that metaphor of an iceberg, where what is beneath the surface is a lot bigger than what you can see. we had to do a lot of infrastructural work below the level of the IIIF content search API from a technical point of view, and well below the universal viewer. So a lot of work to set up new environments, to develop our capability to securely store and index millions of alto files, to set up a GPU cluster and install and configure and optimize HTR flow on it, to run these large batches of transcriptions, and a lot more. So it took a bit longer than we had planned. And while I had hoped, when I sent in this lightning talk proposal, I had hoped to be able to say that we're done, and here's our first officially transcribed documents with in our search service. We now hope for a early 2025 release with protocols from the Svea Court of Appeal, about 1 million pages, which would then be followed by at least another 2 million pages during next year of other types of archival records. The release here won't be just the search interface that you've seen, but also an updated search API where you can search across the aggregated texts, and that new IIIF content search API endpoint that I just mentioned. And these will be public APIs open to everyone without the need for a key. So this is all public domain content. That's it, really. I hope the slides worked this time, and if you are curious about anything that I presented, this is my email address. Just get in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, David. That was well worth the wait. And we still have about 20 minutes here for Q&A. So since we're a rather large group, I would say if you want to speak your question out loud, if you could raise your hand in Zoom. Otherwise, if you don't want to speak, feel free to post your questions in the chat, and Glenn and Martin and I will do our best to facilitate the Q&A that way. Okay, first question is for David. Does your tool provide HTR for English as well as Swedish?
No, only Swedish at this point. We actually have very few documents in English. Our second largest language is probably Latin, and after that French. So at some point we will need to tackle those languages. But another major thing I didn't mention is that we also have lots of documents that are basically tabular in format, and that's a much greater challenge to HTR, because right now we're good at transcribing the handwriting, but you have to teach that AI to handle loads of different layouts of tables, and that's a larger challenge. There should be lots of available training data for English HTR, though. I don't know if there are any public models available, but given how dominant English is, it would be surprising if there weren't. Since no one's saying, maybe I can just add that the HTR flow, though, is able to use any type of, for example, TR, OCR based models. So the software is agnostic as to which. You can sort of load the software with models for different languages. So just to clarify.
Okay, for Aurélien, what's on what's on the horizon for the next 1 to 5 years for the ministry with IIIF?
Well, short answer depends on how many ministries we've been through within 5 years, because usually we get one minister each 12 or 18 months, so it's not a lot to sustain a policy. Even if they don't involve themselves in technical parts, it's not easy to have that regular change. But hopefully, if we sustain the impetus we have right now, I don't know, but it's one of the rare issues in the ministry where everyone seems to be in agreement. Museum, archives, and libraries, everyone kind of agrees that IIIF is useful. So I guess we can expect our developers and our service providers to implement IIIF. Not in every system, because systems are often have a lifespan of 10 or 15 years. But we can expect many internal systems to implement IIIF, and especially the ministry first, because next year we will have IIIF implementation within our own system to visualize IIIF images that would be hosted in other institutions and visualized on our POP platform, and then for internal purposes. So we can expect our example and major examples like the BNF or Musée des Arts Décoratifs, the Arts and Crafts Museum, to show the way. And then I think the next level is going to be the use of IIIF for artificial intelligence to describe automatically collections, and maybe to provide all kinds of new uses that we haven't thought of by ourselves, because curators are kind of limited, and the civil society would be fantastic in finding new ways.
If I might pipe up, one of the things that I didn't show today was the work that we've been doing with integrating with image AI. It's just a little bit early for us, but we now, as of last week, have a pretty significant proof of concept. So really would appreciate anybody who's working in that area. If we'd be delighted to collaborate with them and share knowledge and see where others are going with that as well. We're using image AI to automate the segmentation of the components of an image and looking at the automation of the captioning of those components. The more challenging part that we haven't really tackled yet is how we manage scholarly vocabularies to automate the semantic tagging of those components. But that's really on our path and very much on the most prominent part of our development path at the moment. So please reach out to anybody who's working in that area.
We have a community group for that, so. Other questions? I don't want to rush anyone if you're typing. quiet group today. I would ask our presenters if you have any resources, or even if you would like to share your slide decks in the Slack channel, the 2024-online-meeting. I have tried to capture links and put them in there for people who have requested them, but I suspect that we will get some more conversation in there after the meeting. Otherwise, I will wrap us up. We will be meeting again tomorrow with another set of lightning talks. However, we will be meeting an hour earlier than we are today. Martin or Glenn, do you have anything?
Thanks to all the presenters. Lightning talks are always my favorite thing at online or in-person meetings.
Okay, thanks everyone. We will see you tomorrow. If you have any questions about the meeting, or if you have registered for a workshop and you have trouble wayfinding, please let us know. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.